So good morning again. So the quick story about Bataan is that I have a daughter. I have three daughters. And the middle one went to the Air Force Academy, and she was in the Air Force, and she was stationed down in White Sands. Well, she was stationed at Holloman Air Force Base, which is in the middle of White Sands Missile Range. She's like, Daddy, why don't you do the Bataan Death March with me? It's like, sure, Allison, I'll do the Bataan Death March with you. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And it was just as was described. You were on pavement, you were on hard sand, you were on soft sand. It was crazy. You could do this thing, civilian or military, heavy or light. So if you do it military, you're in BDUs with the boots and the whole bit, I think with a 40-pound pack. And you could do military light with no pack. You could do civilian heavy or civilian light. Oh, naturally, I did civilian light. And so we're doing this thing, and I don't know, we're 20 miles into it or something like that. And there's these animals out there. They're called oryx that they brought in to improve the hunting in the middle of New Mexico. And these things like antelopes, but they've got like razor blade horns on them. And the military are out there with four-wheelers keeping them away from the runners so they don't gore you. And I realized after, there was like when you do like one of these Iron Man things, and it's in Hawaii, you don't realize the Navy is in the water, keeping the sharks away from the swimmers. You know, so there's always this kind of protection that goes on anyway. So a couple of times, like in those last 5 miles, I would just like, I'd stop and there'd be a little sign there about which way you had to go on the trail, and I put my arms and my head down. It's like, Allison, just gives Daddy like 2 minutes. I just need 2 minutes. Okay. So my goal was really to try to do it in less than 8 hours, but I stopped more than I should have, and I finished in 8 hours and 4 minutes or 5 minutes. So it was good. And she got mad at me because she says, well, you don't train. And I said, well, honey, I'm a farmer. Like, I don't have to train. I'm just naturally in shape. So it was very, very interesting. Anyways, so I just want to, it's dangerous to give me 30 minutes, by the way, okay? So, because I could say, welcome, congratulations, thank you for all your service, and, you know, but I'll say a little bit more about that. So I want you to know that Extension, which you are a part of, is very strong and diverse in North Carolina, but we could not have the outreach that we have without all of you. And I'm very proud of the metrics that you have, being in 84 counties with a little over 3,200 volunteers, and that's a big thing for us because, you know, we've got thousands and thousands of volunteers that help us in Extension. We've got about 660 agents, but we've got tens of thousands of volunteers that allow us to really expand our outreach in North Carolina. Just even your hours, and I've been impressed by this as well, 211,000 plus volunteer hours, equivalent to about 101 full-time positions, reaching over about 484,000 North Carolinians, which is also wonderful. And the value of that volunteer service in kind from your time is about $7.7 million, which is great numbers. And you've seen this in the annual report. Now, there's a lot of reasons why we exist and why you're there and why you help. And part of what's going on, and some of you have heard me talk about this before, about the state changing and more people moving in and where they're going. And they're moving to urban counties. And if you take that crescent of urban counties from Mecklenburg over to New Hanover and Forsyth and Guilford and Durham and Wake and back down to New Hanover, you've got a huge urban population. But you can total up about 15 counties. If you go to the census and you look at, say, maybe 85% as a cutoff of counties where they consider the percentage of the people they consider to be living in an urban environment. It's kind of suburban and urban together, but there's about 15 counties that fit that criteria. And you add counties in like Cumberland and Buncombe and others that kind of fall into that category, you come up with about 15 counties. And that means that the state is really changing in a lot of different ways. And just think about how it even changes from a government standpoint and representation of people, and how more and more of the legislature will come from urban areas, representing people that have no connection to agriculture, no connection to what we do here and what we do in Extension, and how important it is to really have an overall education to make it work. And just to give you an example, so I bounce back and forth in my comments, because many of you know I'm from Massachusetts. This is the 110th year that our family farm has been in operation. Started off with 100 acres in 1910. We got about a little under 60 acres now. We've got 3 parts to our business. We've got about an acre greenhouse spring operation, mostly retail. force bulbs for Easter, hanging baskets for Mother's Day, all the spring annuals, vegetable transplants, all of that stuff. About 50 acres of fresh market vegetables, mostly wholesale to supermarkets and institutional food buyers, but we also sell, we have a CSA on the farm, we also do farmers markets, and we also have a farm stand. And then in the fall we do mums. And we're up to 110,000 mums now. It's about 7 acres of mums, which we also ship to supermarkets. The first year we started with 5,000. I thought 5,000 mums, like, oh my God, I'm going 5,000 mums. I can't believe it. And that was 1999. And now we're at 110,000, and they virtually all go out wholesale to supermarkets. So that's the family operation. As I mentioned, I have 3 daughters, and my youngest daughter, who's 27 now, is running the business. But she calls me when there's a problem. So yesterday she called me. And this goes back to the public being disconnected from their food supply. So we started one of the farmers markets yesterday. It happened to be in our town. So she gets there, and there's only 2 vendors there at the farmers market. There's us and this other farm that's from about 15 miles away. Now, it's the first week in June in New England, okay? We actually haven't even set our peppers and eggplants yet, okay? The first planting of summer squash, zucchini, and cucumbers are about this big, okay? And the first crop of tomatoes, we just put the first string on, and they're kind of little, but they're growing. It's been cool up there. So we get there, this other farm's there, they've got peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, cucumbers, onions, carrots, and then cabbage, the whole bit, right? And people are asking them, my daughter's listening, she's kind of snooping around a little bit, because what we have ready, we have lettuce and rhubarb, okay? That's what's ready, okay? Even the kale's not ready. Even the kale's not ready yet. And she bought plants from the greenhouses and some hanging baskets and tomato transplants and pepper transplants and all that. And this other farm is telling all the customers there, oh yeah, we've had a great growing season so far. Well, as you know, I mean, we're not even like harvesting those things here yet. We're just about to start to. So all that stuff's at least in South Georgia and Florida. And my daughter's going ballistic. She's yelling at me on the telephone yesterday. It's like, what am I going to do with this farmer's market? And she goes back to the contract that we signed, and of course it says that you have to grow everything, and it has to be grown in New England. And if you have some flexibility to sell stuff that isn't your own, but it has to be from New England, and it can be at most 20%. So this other vendor was 100%, but the public is totally clueless. They're just asking, how's your season? Look at these great eggplants and blah, 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 and this is how it goes. And so the need for education of the public, as you can imagine, is pretty big, and it happens every day. And even with everything we try to do, there's always more education to do. I also want to thank the county staff in all of this because, as I mentioned, you are all an extension of what we do with our county agents and even our people on campus. And I want to thank Lucy and Charlotte for everything they do here on campus with the Extension Master Gardener program, because it really allows us to be able to work all across the state, or at least in the 84 counties that we work in. I want to just talk a little bit about Extension, and I know you got a message yesterday from Gary Moore talking about the history of Master Gardeners, the history of the land grant system and all that. And that is incredibly important. The partnerships that we have, not only the partnerships that we have with you all and the agents in the county offices, but the partnerships with federal, state, and county government really makes all of this work. And it's because we are balancing sort of the needs of what our customers need versus where the science and technology is taking us to move everything forward. That's a partnership as well that makes it all work. We focus a lot on training our agents to maximize both their technical and their professional competence. And we want to attract and retain great people. And it's difficult in this environment. You know, the unemployment rate is incredibly low. Millennials in general don't like to stay in one place for a long time, and they like to move around. I think the attrition rate is around 25%. We're at about 12%, this is annually. We're around 12% in Extension, which I think is really good, and we do a better job of attracting and retaining people than the population in general, which is a great thing. And as I mentioned, we have strong support. Now, when I got here 3 years ago, because I was here on the faculty in the 80s, worked in the horticulture department, I worked on weeds and vegetable crops and small fruits, and I was Extension and I did research, and then I quit to go back and run the family farm for 27 years, I've been back for 3 years, and some of you know that. when I came back, we were using a number of the impact of extension in North Carolina of around $300 million. That was the impact of, say, everything that we do. And it always seemed like a low number to me because I know we spend over $100 million in extension between federal, state, county money, philanthropy, grants and contracts, that kind of thing. So we ended up hiring an outside firm about 6 or 8 months ago to help us get a handle on our impact. Because it's really hard sometimes, especially when we're dealing with the public, especially with some of our youth programs, our food and nutrition programs, to really get a handle on the impact we have in North Carolina. Agriculture is a little easier. You know, you come up with a new practice, you know that it gives you so many extra bushels of something, you know how many acres you have, you know what the value is for those bushels. You can kind of come up with some numbers that are relevant. So I was really concerned about how difficult it was to put some of these numbers together. So we hired this outside company. Well, it turns out it's not 300 million, it's 2.1 billion, which is a huge number. It's a huge number for the state. We're very proud. It's 7 times what we have been telling everybody it was. So I'm glad we went ahead and did that because it really shows the impact we have in North Carolina and our ability to still be relevant and to be able to continue to get funding, especially from the state level. The thing about us and Extension and Master Gardeners is really the connection with the university. It's what makes us different than just, you know, speculation or hearsay. It's a university that is providing research-based information. So the information that we give you, the information that's in that handbook, the information that you have to work with the public is based on science. It's based on something that's defensible, repeatable. So that if we give somebody advice, we've got a pretty good idea that what we're telling them will work. And it's not based on a single observation that you might have seen over here or over there. And it really is what makes us different. That research base from the university is what sets Extension apart from just about any other group that provides information to people. And that's something that you really need to never forget. A little bit about sort of what the university is doing to sort of beef up what we do, especially in the plant sciences area. And this includes food and ornamentals and right across the board. So we talk a lot about changing world populations. We talk a lot about needing more food to feed people. And it's hard to even have those conversations sometimes when you think about the food that's wasted, you think about commodity prices being low and how difficult it is to stay in business nowadays as a farmer. But the reality is the need for an increased amount of food in this world is real. And how do we get there? I mean, we know the population's going up, but we know every time you turn around, there's less and less land in production. Because there's always a house being built, there's always another road, another bypass, another shopping center, another school, more soccer fields. It just goes on. And all those things are great, but the reality is that they always take farmland away. And so you've got more people, you have less farmland. And how do you make that all work? You've got to have science, you have to have technology, you have to make it work. Now, some people struggle with the idea of technology and science in agriculture for some reason. I mean, the same people that will sleep on the sidewalk overnight to get the latest version of this will also tell you that they don't believe in science. And so that's a struggle, and people just have a disconnect sometimes with technology and science in general, you know, versus what goes on with their food supply. So as many of you may have heard, you know, we are embarking on something at the university here, especially in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, called the Plant Sciences Initiative. So the Plant Science Initiative is something that was really envisioned about 3 years ago. And it involves a building. And I'll talk a little bit about the building in a second, but really it's a philosophy, it's a research philosophy about how to move forward and how to embrace more and how to embrace collaborative research, not just within our departments within our college, but across departments, but also across colleges within the university and across universities, in terms of how we can do a better job of understanding plants and being able to do a better job of providing what we need moving forward in many, many areas. Going along with that is this building. Now this building, they've actually started working on it already on the Centennial campus. It'll be 3 buildings above the Hunt Library going up the hill towards the cathedral if you happen to go out there. There's a building right next to Hunt Library, which is the last engineering building, which is well under construction. Our building's about a year behind that. But our building will not only be the largest building on NC State's campus, but it'll be the largest agricultural research building at any land-grant university in the United States. So it's a huge undertaking for us. And it really means that we have a real focus on how to move forward. And just give you some ideas of the kind of things that are going on and kind of what we're thinking as a university, and also trying to address the needs that are really out there around the state. So we talk about world population, we talk about everything that's going on, we even talk about diet changes and how when people become more affluent in certain countries, they want to change their diet, they want to do different things, they want to eat more meat, they want to have a different source of protein. There's all kinds of things that come into that, which also further put restrictions and constraints on the land that we already have. Just to give you an idea of kind of what the technology looks like. So the screen is a field of corn in Hyde County, okay? And there's a couple of things to think about. First is, what's the potential we currently have on what a field of corn can generate in terms of bushels? Is it 300 bushels? Is it 400 bushels? Is it 450 bushels? It's kind of, what's that upper limit? And so one of the things you want to do is want to see, you want to maximize production so you can achieve the full genetic potential of what you're planting. At the same time, our technology is so sophisticated now on the farm, and just like everything else, like you buy that's electronic, that technology becomes cheaper and cheaper all the time. So that farmer that's out there in his combine harvesting that field of corn can look at that field after and know at any given spot in that field what was the yield. He might have spots in that field where it was 50 bushels. He may have spots in that field where it was 350. And the idea is you can go back and you can look and you can try to figure out what was it about that spot that gave you 300 bushels and what was it about that spot that gave you 50. Was there a weed problem there? Is there a drainage problem there? Is there a saltwater intrusion problem there because it's right along the coastline or the sea level is really high in that particular spot? So it allows you to go back and really kind of figure these things out. And then think about the technology. So we just bought this planter, okay? We've got a precision agriculture person, Jason Ward, who works in our Department of Biological and Engineering. So planting equipment is very sophisticated. And this whole idea of big data isn't just relevant when you're on the website and you searched for a new coffee maker and then the next 10 times you're on the web, there's an ad for a coffee maker on the right-hand side, okay? Big data is everywhere, and it's even there in agriculture. And what happens with a lot of our equipment is constantly uploading data to the cloud. Pretty much with the companies that you buy the equipment from. So even from the standpoint of USDA, they're able to, for example, the planter knows where it's been. It knows what fields it's been in. It even knows what it planted. And it knows how many acres it planted. Okay? And so from the standpoint of what we're doing, say with this particular planter, you can upload information into this planter. First of all, this planter could have more than one variety of the crop you're planting, and it can also vary the seeding rate. So for example, if we find that if in a spot of the field that has a heavy weed population, that we can overcome that by planting a higher population of corn or soybeans or something like that in that part of the field, and by having an extra population, we can outcompete the weeds and we can get more yield in that spot. You can upload all that information to the planter, and as this planter is going across the field at 6 miles an hour, it knows exactly where it is, and it knows exactly where the issues are. So for example, it hits those spots, it can change the planting rate. It could change the planting depth if the soil is drier there. So this technology is actually pretty amazing. And it's something that we're really working on. It's part of what we're doing in plant sciences. Even, I'll give you one more example. So some people, talk, and this is reality, like dogs can smell cancer, right? People, okay, we've all heard this. Well, volatiles are something that are everywhere. Plants the same way. So, like a plant could get a disease, and us looking at it, we wait for some symptomology. Something changes, the color changes, we see some pathogen growing on it. But the reality is the plant has been attacked much earlier. And the plant can actually change how it responds well before you can see any symptomology. And we have the ability now, working with the College of Engineering, to work on technology where you can actually put sensors out in the field that can detect volatile changes in the plants so that you can know there's something wrong with them while you still have the opportunity to do something about it, rather than waiting until you're further along the line. And so all of this is important in breeding. Eventually all this trickles down to things that homeowners plant, things you plant in your gardens, and things you plant in your planting beds and so forth. So this technology, it starts off with something that's, you know, relevant from the standpoint of agriculture and feeding people and, you know, farmers being able to stay in business, but then it quickly moves over time to other areas. And things that you see, but you don't even think sometimes about all the years of science and background that went into something that seems so simple, like a new color of a flower. That was because of, you know, a lot of genetic work that took place maybe over a 10-year period. So just lots of things going on that way. I think about like the mum crop. The first year we grew mums, we pinched everything. So we put them out the 1st of June. The 15th of June, every plant got a single pinch. That was easy. The second pinch, every plant had anywhere between 10 to about 25 branches that we hand pinched. You know, that was ridiculous when we had 5,000 mums. You know, now we got 110,000, so it's a little more difficult to do that. But the reality is the varieties have changed. You know, some of the standard varieties have changed. The Belgian varieties are out there. We can control branching now. You know, mums flower based on photoperiod, so some varieties flower early, middle of August, some don't flower till the middle of October. Sometimes the early ones get confused if you have a cold night or you have drought stress or something, they want to start flowering prematurely. And then, you know, in the old days, we'd have to go out and break those blossoms off and force the plant to try to branch one more time to get some size on it before it flowered. So now we know, for example, I can increase the nitrogen level in the drip system and just go to 500 parts per million nitrogen. It's like somebody that over manures their garden, right? And they tell you, we got these huge tomato plants, but there's no fruit, right? Because there's too much nitrogen, okay? Well, we can do that through the drip system with the mums, and we could force some nitrogen in there and cause all those flowers to fall off and get the plant to branch one more time. And we don't have to go out there and pinch 60,000 mums because they decided to branch, flower prematurely. So there's a lot of science and a lot of things that go on, and a lot of what you see, what's in that great handbook you have now and in your training, you need to know that it's not just speculation, and you as master gardeners that relay information to people need to embrace the fact that you're part of this university and that you're part of the science that goes on in giving people the best information that's out there, and that's incredibly important. And this is true not just for plants for consumption, vegetables and fruits and that kind of thing, but across the board, including ornamentals and everything that we grow. Remember that our agents can't do it alone, and you are incredibly important. The need for volunteers in this environment to really help us do our work in extension is more important than it's ever been. I embrace your 40th anniversary. I think it's great to achieve a milestone like that. I want to thank you all for your service. I want to congratulate everybody that's going to win awards today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning. So thank you very much.